This is Brian with ScreenFiles.com and Review. And anyone who's watched this channel knows I didn't see the Fox-Men movies in theaters. Reason being, I thought they were terrible interpretations of the X-Men. For the most part. They had their highs, but mainly it was lows. It was just not an enjoyable experience for me. So, being that Disney has purchased the theatrical assets to 20th Century Fox, I've been seeing them because the Fox-Men era is over. I think a few weeks ago I saw X-Men Apocalypse. Now I'm taking a look at Logan. And this is first off, it's directed by James Mangold, who you may not be aware directed the prior movie, The Wolverine. And Logan is a mixed bag in the sense that A, it is not nearly as good as reviews seem to say it is. I don't quite know where that came from. And it's an unnecessarily violent and grim movie. The saving grace for Logan, I think, is James Mangold's direction. It's very taut, it makes sense, it works. But story-wise, I believe Mangold wrote or co-wrote the screenplay. It's unnecessarily grim. Keep in mind something. I don't read I should say read, because I don't read them much lately, on occasion, but not very often. But for me, comics are a celebration of the idea that being good, persevering, will bring its own reward. That man is essentially good. He may stray, but he's essentially good. Those are some of the ideals that brought me to comics. With Logan, it's just grim. This Wolverine, I don't know. I've never seen this Wolverine before, and I don't particularly like him. He's afraid. He's morally kind of gray, and that's problematic for me. Logan works on the premise that this old and tired Wolverine is being poisoned by the adamantium, which laces his bones. This is a silly notion at best. Well, keep in mind, adamantium isn't real, and this whole shit is silly. But within the context of these movies and comics, this is a silly notion. Why is it a silly notion? Because, for a start, certain metals don't react to the body in a hostile fashion. This is why you can have people with leg implants and knee implants and all sorts of implants all over their bodies. Certain metals are inert to the body. The body doesn't treat them as hostile. They don't do anything. They're just there. So the idea that, now keep in mind, Wolverine has existed quite a while in comics. The idea that suddenly his adamantium skeleton is killing him is the dopiest notion. It's ridiculous. Now keep in mind something though. The body can change in the way it reacts to things as well. I mean, I don't necessarily think that's the case for parts that are implanted in the body, but you can develop allergic reactions to things that you didn't have prior. I don't have a peanut allergy currently. It is possible, as in not beyond the pale, that I develop one later in life. It can happen. But the idea that this metal, which in the years that this character has existed is inert, suddenly is poisoning him, is again, it's a silly notion, and it has no basis in this character. The idea that Professor X, and it's hinted at, they don't really tell you what it is, but it's hinted at, has had this accident, a seizure, and he ends up killing a whole bunch of his charges, is also a silly notion. Why is it silly? Because if you've read the X-Men comics, Professor X doesn't roll that way. He can create all kinds of safeguards, and let's hypothetically say it were possible. Once again, he can create all sorts of safeguards to ensure that such an event does not happen. Logan is what happens when you have people who don't understand these comics speculating about what could happen. This is, again, based on the comic exclusively, is a ludicrous movie. And what makes it even more so is that it lacks continuity. It's not that Logan coming to this point where he's so beaten down, he's so without hope, he is no longer a hero. That's not the problem. It's that, like with the DCEU, there's no evolution to this point. Logan is, or I should say Wolverine, is one thing for all the movies. And suddenly in Logan, he's this. This is exactly why continuity is such an important thing to me. You build on events. Every character is an evolution. They start at one point, they reach this point. But from this point to that point, there's that middle section, and you bridge it. That's continuity. This movie has no continuity. He's suddenly one way in all the other X-Men movies, and then suddenly he's this. And again, as I said, they hint at an event. They don't really say it out loud, but you pretty much know that Professor X did something terrible, and Logan's skeleton is poisoning him. Again, as I mentioned, a dopey idea. So we're given this Logan who's just so beaten down. He's so lost. And that's not Logan at all. And that's what bothers me. And again, it's the continuity issue. If you're going to make Logan this way, you need to show the progression of that. How did he get that way? How did this happen? But no, it's suddenly he's this and suddenly he's that. Literally a 360-degree change from where he was prior. So Logan is an accomplished movie. It looks good. It's well shot. But it's also hopeless. It's also needlessly violent. It's just not that great. I wish it were. It's just, and as I said, it's less the problem of this movie itself than everything that led to it. But suffice it to say, I did not enjoy this. This was not an interesting Logan. This was not a superhero. This was a man who had lost everything and was just trying to hold on to any little bit of himself that he could. And maybe that was the movie they intended to make. Clearly it was. But this is not what I watch superhero movies for. This was a slog. This was not enjoyable. This was needlessly violent. I'm not aware of a James Mangold movie being associated with torture porn, but if something was, it's this. It's not that the violence is shocking. I've seen lots of horror movies. This didn't bother me in that sense. It's that the violence is constant and it's unnecessary, and at certain points it becomes gratuitous. It has this masturbatory quality to it that is just not enjoyable to watch. This movie was, for me at any rate, not necessary, not enjoyable, which is odd because, as I said, it's a well-produced, it's a good-looking, it's a well-done movie. And that's kind of the paradox of Logan. It's a well-done, it's an interesting movie, but it doesn't exist in and of itself. There are other things that surround it, that link to it, and they do it so badly, it reflects badly on this movie as well. This is, if you're a completist, well, being that this is literally like, I think, a year or 3 after Logan has come out, either you've seen it or you haven't. For me, this was just not an enjoyable experience. For me, Logan was the opposite of what I watch superhero movies for. There was no hope. There was no redemption. It was just murky and just not a good time. This is Brian with ScreenFiles.com and Review. Peace.